Welcome, listeners. I'm Silas, your sleepy storyteller, pulling you down the rabbit hole of time, where dreams and memories intertwine. If you enjoy these videos, please tap the like button. It really helps. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can keep drifting along on your sleepy journey through history. And before we wander down the rabbit hole, share your city and time in the comments. I love imagining our journey threading through every ticking clock. Now, take a moment to find a comfortable resting position. Close your eyes gently, and in your own time, allow yourself to sink into the quiet atmosphere of the past as we begin our slow journey together. The first light of dawn stretches over downtown Los Angeles, brushing pale gold and muted lavender across the facades of high rises. The city breathes softly in these fragile hours, a low, almost imperceptible hum of traffic and distant sirens mingling with the quiet. I find myself at the threshold of Skid Row, at the corner of 7th Street and Main Street, where the air is thick with stories waiting to be told. Here, the streets are uneven, sidewalks cracked from years of neglect, and the faint outlines of crosswalks nearly worn away by decades of footsteps, some hurried, some hesitant, and some weary with exhaustion. The morning air is a complex tapestry. Faint smoke curls from a discarded fire, mingling with the acrid tang of trash, the faint sweetness of leftover coffee, and the earthy aroma of damp cardboard. Somewhere nearby, a dog stirs in a tangle of blankets, its low growl resonating through the stillness. The wind threads softly through the alleyways and chain-link fences, brushing past weathered fire escapes. I draw a slow, steady breath, letting these scents and sounds anchor me to the moment, carrying both the weight and the strange beauty of this neighborhood. I begin my walk east along 7th Street, stepping carefully past clusters of tents and makeshift shelters. Cardboard and tarps are stacked in uneven towers, weighed down by bricks, bottles, or stray debris, forming fragile barriers against the world. A frayed blanket clings to a fence, fluttering slightly in the breeze. Nearby, a pair of worn shoes rests beside a steaming styrofoam cup. Shopping carts, their wheels squeaking faintly, lean against lampposts, filled with possessions that represent everything a person owns. Each object is a silent testament, telling stories of survival, resilience, and adaptation. Faces emerge in the dim light of dawn. A man with a gray-streaked beard stretches beneath a thin blanket, his eyes meeting mine for a fraction of a second before returning to thoughts unspoken. A young woman carefully organizes cans and bottles, her hands moving with precision despite the weariness etched into her features. There is a quiet dignity here, a subtle insistence on presence and humanity in a space that often overlooks both. I reflect on the forces that brought them here: rising housing costs, systemic failures, mental health challenges, and social neglect. Skid Row has long served as both sanctuary and cage, and every step I take bears witness to lives lived in tension with the city that surrounds them. The buildings along 7th Street are scarred by time. Faded paint, chipped stucco, and cracked windows create an atmosphere of slow decay. Graffiti stretches across walls, a mixture of defiance, expression, and memory. Some storefronts stand empty, while others have signs of recent occupation, makeshift curtains, tarps covering broken windows, or chalk markings on door frames. The architecture here is weary but enduring, a mirror of the people it shelters, resilient, battered, and layered with history. As I continue eastward, I notice small bursts of life amid the decay. Pigeons coo softly, hopping along ledges and windowsills, while stray cats weave carefully between tents. Sunlight begins to spill over the buildings, reflecting off puddles left from the night's rain, revealing fragments of cardboard, paper, and discarded objects. The contrast is striking. Beauty and struggle interwoven, persistence breaking through the harshness of circumstance. Near the corner of 6th Street, a group of men huddle over a small fire. Smoke curls upward in delicate tendrils, dissipating into the morning light. Their conversation is low and measured, muted laughter, punctuated by brief pauses, words carrying between them like a fragile thread. I imagine the stories exchanged, memories of families left behind, friends lost to addiction, days spent negotiating a city that often turns its eyes away. Each word, each gesture, is a quiet assertion of existence, a claim to dignity amid hardship. The sidewalks grow more cluttered as I proceed. Tents, carts, and personal belongings line the way, forcing me to navigate carefully. Here, life is negotiated with careful precision. Each step is deliberate, avoiding obstacles while acknowledging the human presence that inhabits every corner. I think of the nights spent here, the constant negotiation for warmth and safety, the vigilance required to survive. The quiet morning allows me to observe, to absorb, without intruding, offering a fleeting glimpse into the endurance and humanity of those who call this place home. Above the streets, fire escapes display the traces of daily life. Clothing hangs from lines, drying in the early light, while faint glimmers of activity hint at mornings slowly beginning within abandoned buildings and temporary shelters. The vertical layering of this environment creates a rhythm of life that stretches from the alleys below to rooftops above. A silent choreography of persistence and survival. I pass remnants of old hotels, their windows shattered or boarded, facades pockmarked by time. These buildings serve as makeshift refuges, offering shelter from the elements and a fragile sense of privacy. I imagine the stories contained within, quiet breakfasts shared over borrowed cups, whispered conversations in darkened hallways, fleeting moments of comfort in a harsh world. The walls themselves seem to absorb and hold these narratives, standing as witnesses to lives unfolding in the shadow of adversity. Pockets of green, palm trees lining streets, weeds pushing stubbornly through cracks in the asphalt, create a strange contrast to the concrete and debris. A bird lands briefly on a ledge, tilting its head curiously before lifting into the morning sky. Life persists here in unexpected ways, delicate yet insistent, a reminder that the streets are not defined solely by hardship, but also by resilience and survival. Social service offices and missions appear along Main Street, their doors beginning to open, offering meals, medical care, and brief reprieves from the struggles of the streets. Workers move quietly, preparing for the morning rush. These spaces serve as fragile islands of hope, small but significant gestures in a neighborhood often defined by scarcity and hardship. The people arriving here carry with them layers of struggle and experience, stepping into these doors seeking nourishment, warmth, or simply a moment of care. As I continue along Main Street, the streets are alive with the soft rhythms of early morning, footsteps echoing along cracked sidewalks, voices murmuring through alleys, the occasional creak of a cartwheel. The details accumulate: a tattered jacket hung on a fence, a plastic bag flapping in the breeze, footprints fading into dust, all forming a layered map of human presence and endurance. The city itself feels like a living witness, breathing alongside the people it shelters, carrying their stories in the bricks, the asphalt, and the faint glimmers of sunlight reflecting from broken windows. The morning unfolds slowly, revealing the textures of life on Skid Row. Faces etched with fatigue, movements careful and measured, small acts of care quietly exchanged. Each detail is a testament to persistence, to the quiet dignity of those who navigate these streets day after day. The sun climbs higher, casting longer shadows across alleys and open sidewalks, softening edges and highlighting the interplay of light and shadow that defines this place. And so the walk continues, over cracked pavement, past flickering neon signs, around corners where the faint scent of coffee and fire mixes with the tang of discarded belongings. The streets stretch onward, inviting the careful observer to move slowly, to notice, to witness. The details accumulate, layer upon layer, each step a continuation of the story, each corner revealing another fragment of life, another trace of resilience. The streets have begun to take on a fuller rhythm as I drift deeper into the heart of Skid Row. The sun climbs slowly, spilling pale light over the rooftops and alleys, catching on plastic tarps and the edges of makeshift tents. The tents are arranged with careful precision, some pressed flush against walls, others creating small clusters around communal fires. Their colors, faded blues, tattered reds, muted greens, stand in stark contrast to the gray concrete and brick that stretches endlessly around them. Each tent is a tiny world, a temporary fortress, a fragile claim to privacy and warmth amid chaos. A faint aroma of cooking fires drifts through the air, mingling with the scent of damp cardboard and the faint metallic tang of rusted metal. Someone hums quietly inside a tent as they prepare breakfast, a melody barely audible over the rustle of the wind. There's a strange intimacy in these sounds, a delicate chorus of resilience. I pause to listen, letting my steps slow even further, allowing the human stories to settle like dust in the morning light. Cardboard shelters lean against the sides of buildings and chain-link fences. They are sculpted with ingenuity, weighed down with bricks, or propped up with scavenged wood. Each piece of cardboard bears the marks of survival, folds from repeated use, stains from spilled coffee, traces of handwritten notes or scribbles that might be a memory or a warning. I notice a line of socks strung above one shelter, swaying gently. A stuffed animal peeks from the folds of a blanket inside another, a silent companion in a world that often feels indifferent. The streets here are alive with movement that is both subtle and deliberate. People carry shopping carts filled with possessions, weaving carefully around fires, tents, and each other. A young woman rearranges a collection of cans, lining them up neatly along a curb. A man sits cross-legged beside a makeshift fire, stirring a pot with careful attention, his eyes distant but alert. Their actions are slow, intentional, a rhythm shaped by necessity, by the routines of survival. I notice the micro-communities forming naturally, clusters of tents that serve as social hubs, areas where people exchange food, clothing, or words of advice. There's a sense of order within disorder, an unspoken understanding that sustains life in a place that might otherwise seem hopeless. The quiet murmurs of conversation carry between the tents, soft laughter punctuating the morning air. In these moments, the weight of despair is tempered by connection, and I can feel the resilience that pulses beneath the surface. A small dog trots along beside a woman, its paws lightly tapping against the concrete. She reaches down to stroke its fur, and I notice the way she smiles, a brief, fleeting expression of care. Even in hardship, there are these threads of tenderness. I imagine the stories embedded in such gestures, the companionship, the trust, the fleeting moments of joy that persist despite overwhelming adversity. The alleyways open up to reveal more hidden corners, places where trash has accumulated over years, yet life finds a way. Piles of newspapers serve as insulation for a tent. Faded blankets drape over makeshift beds, and discarded crates form temporary tables. I see evidence of human creativity everywhere, simple acts of construction, adaptation, and reclamation. Even the discarded items hold purpose. A tin can, a broken umbrella, or a bent coat hanger transforms into a tool for survival. The sun rises higher now, filtering through the gaps between buildings and tents, casting long shadows that shift slowly over the streets. The light illuminates small acts of care, a blanket shaken out to catch the morning air, a fire tended with steady hands, a bag of clothing offered to someone passing by. The streets are both harsh and tender, a constant interplay between survival and small acts of humanity. As I continue, I notice the faces more clearly, eyes that carry exhaustion, hands that are roughened from labor or hardship, bodies bent from years of adversity. Yet in their movements, there is also grace. In the quiet gestures, a helping hand, a shared cigarette, a nod of recognition, there is resilience. Each person I pass is a testament to endurance, a quiet refusal to disappear into the indifference of the city. Nearby, a soup kitchen begins to open its doors. Volunteers move briskly, setting out tables of food, carrying hot coffee in large thermoses, and offering blankets and hygiene supplies. A line forms slowly along the curb, people waiting patiently, speaking softly to one another, sharing small smiles and quiet greetings. The aroma of fresh coffee mingles with the smoke from nearby fires, creating a strange comfort amid the stark realities of the streets. I pause beside a cluster of tents to observe a man who is arranging his belongings, a careful ritual performed with precision. Every item has its place. A small bag of personal effects, a folded blanket, a few cans of food. He hums under his breath, a faint melody that seems to mark the rhythm of his morning. It is a practice of order, of claiming space and dignity in a place that offers neither easily. The streets themselves are layered with history. Faded graffiti marks walls that have witnessed decades of hardship, messages of defiance, hope, and memory etched into concrete. Some markings are artistic, intricate designs that speak of creativity surviving even in dire circumstances. Others are simple reminders of survival. A phone number, a date, a name. I let my eyes trace these details, feeling the connection between the environment and the lives it shelters. Each line, a silent narrative of struggle and endurance. A faint wind moves through the alleys, stirring plastic tarps and loose papers. The sound is almost musical, a delicate percussion accompanying the soft rhythms of morning life. Somewhere, a child's laughter rises briefly, then fades, a reminder that even here, life continues in all its forms, fragile yet persistent. As the morning unfolds, I notice the interplay of light and shadow, of movement and stillness. The tents and shelters form a living mosaic, constantly shifting as people move through the streets, tending to fires, preparing meals, or engaging in quiet conversation. The rhythm is slow, deliberate, yet full of life, a cadence that mirrors the heartbeat of Skid Row itself. I move along the street, letting the details accumulate in my mind. A torn blanket hanging from a fence, a kettle steaming over a small fire, a line of footprints pressed into dirt and dust. Each step is a meditation, a quiet acknowledgement of the lives unfolding around me. The sensory experience is rich and complex, weaving together sound, scent, texture, and light into a layered portrait of existence at the margins of the city. The alleyways open to reveal more intimate spaces, small courtyards where tents cluster closely together, areas where people gather to exchange stories, share warmth, or simply sit in quiet contemplation. The human presence is palpable, yet understated, a delicate balance between visibility and invisibility, resilience and vulnerability. I feel the weight of these lives pressing gently against my awareness, a reminder that history is not only written in books, but lived moment by moment in streets like these. And so the walk continues, deeper into the heart of Skid Row, past the fires, tents, and quiet conversations. The streets stretch onward, inviting the observer to move slowly, to notice, and to witness. Life here is raw and unfiltered, a mixture of hardship and quiet perseverance. And as I step forward, the morning light shifts again, highlighting new details, new stories, and new traces of resilience waiting to be discovered. The morning sun climbs a little higher, painting the streets in soft, golden light. The air shifts slightly, carrying with it the mingled scents of brewing coffee, damp cardboard, and the faint aroma of freshly prepared meals. As I walk east along 5th Street toward San Pedro, the presence of the city's missions begins to assert itself, not with grandiosity, but quietly, insistently, like whispered invitations into spaces of fragile refuge. I pass the midnight mission first, its brick facade unassuming, almost blending into the surrounding buildings. Yet the small line forming outside tells its story. Men and women, children, tucked close to blankets, wait patiently for their morning meal. The lines are orderly, composed, though weariness threads every movement. I notice small interactions. A shared smile, a whispered greeting, a helping hand steadying someone's steps over a puddle. Each gesture is a quiet echo of humanity. Small acts of grace threading through the larger tapestry of struggle. Inside the courtyard, volunteers move with careful deliberation, ladling steaming soup into bowls, stacking bread on trays, pouring coffee into chipped mugs. The clatter of utensils, the low hum of conversation, and the hiss of the coffee machine form a symphony of survival. Here, hope and despair coexist in a delicate balance. Some faces show exhaustion, so profound it seems etched into the very bones, while others carry sparks of anticipation at the promise of a warm meal, of a moment of care, of being seen. The history of the Midnight Mission is written in every detail of its space. By 1992, the surge in demand had reached staggering levels. Social programs struggled to keep up with the growing needs of the city's most vulnerable. Skid Row had long been a magnet for those rejected or abandoned by society. And missions like this one were both sanctuary and lifeline. Volunteers move through the line gently, navigating crowded spaces with awareness and empathy, aware that each interaction, however small, carries meaning. Continuing along San Pedro Street, the Los Angeles Mission comes into view. Its facade is taller, its doors flung wide to welcome anyone seeking relief. The line stretches along the sidewalk, people quietly adjusting their positions, exchanging soft words. Children clutch blankets and stuffed animals, their small bodies weaving through the adults' legs. There's a rhythm here, movements repeated daily, gestures learned and taught. The ebb and flow of giving and receiving a kind of tacit ritual. Inside the mission, the air is warm, infused with the aroma of breakfast cooking. Pans sizzle, spoons clatter, and the voices of volunteers rise and fall in soft cadence. Men and women find their seats on folding chairs or at long communal tables. A volunteer gently adjusts a blanket around an elderly woman's shoulders. Another kneels to tie a child's untied shoe. Each act is quiet and unobtrusive, yet it resonates profoundly against the harshness of the streets outside. The Los Angeles Mission, like its counterparts, is a space where despair is momentarily softened by care, and where life continues in the tension between vulnerability and resilience. The Union Rescue Mission is next, its weathered brick and simple signage giving little indication of the lifelines extended within. Here, the lines are longer, the waiting more palpable, yet patience holds. There is a quiet dignity in the way people stand, shoulders squared, hands clasped, eyes forward. Conversations are soft, measured, sharing of stories, brief exchanges about the night past, a nod toward tomorrow. Volunteers circulate, offering trays of eggs and toast, mugs of coffee, and above all, attention and acknowledgement. I watch as a man passes a piece of bread to a neighbor whose hands tremble, a small yet profound act of kindness that speaks volumes about the community that exists amidst hardship. The missions are not merely providing meals, they are fostering connection, sustaining threads of human dignity in a world that often erases it. Each gesture, handing out a blanket, offering a cup of soup, a gentle word, is a quiet rebellion against despair, a testament to human resilience. The streets surrounding these missions are alive with their own narratives. Shopping carts lean against fences, packed with salvaged belongings. Cardboard shelters line the sidewalks, marked by faint graffiti, weather stains, and the imprint of nightly rest. I notice individuals moving between the missions, some arriving from blocks away, others heading off with steaming meals clutched in hands that are calloused or scarred. The rhythm of movement here is deliberate, each step a negotiation of space, each interaction a small assertion of presence. Historical context drifts softly through my awareness. By 1992, the crack cocaine epidemic had exacerbated the challenges faced by the missions and social programs. Resources were limited, and the city struggled to provide adequate shelter, food, and health care. Yet within these constraints, acts of care persisted. Small miracles of empathy, ingenuity, and determination. The missions offered not only physical nourishment, but also moments of connection and recognition, affirming the existence of lives too easily ignored by broader society. As I observe, I see hope and despair coexisting in one frame. A young man smiles faintly as he sips his coffee, eyes scanning the room with quiet relief. Nearby, a woman cradles a baby, the child's small hand clutching at a blanket for comfort. Behind them, a man rests his head against the wall, exhaustion visible in every line of his posture, yet he is surrounded by others who acknowledge his presence with quiet respect. The coexistence of these emotions, the weight of struggle, and the persistence of hope defines the atmosphere here, a fragile equilibrium that endures day after day. Outside the missions, the city hums faintly. Cars pass by on distant streets, punctuated by the occasional siren or horn. The sunlight strikes puddles and puddled debris, casting reflections that ripple across broken glass and asphalt. I pause to breathe it in. The scent of fresh coffee, the tang of concrete, the faint aroma of frying eggs, and to let the textures of this world settle around me. Every sense is attuned to the delicate balance of life, survival, and shared humanity that unfolds quietly along these streets. I notice small signs of continuity and community. A dog curls under a bench near a mission doorway, its coat matted, but eyes alert. A volunteer kneels beside a fire hydrant to hand a cup of water to someone waiting in line. A stray cat moves silently across a patch of sunlight, pausing to survey the street before slipping away into shadow. These moments are subtle yet significant, markers of life persisting in ways both delicate and resilient. Passing from mission to mission, the streets themselves seem to absorb and reflect the rhythms of these spaces. Tattered signs, worn steps, and patched sidewalks tell stories as old as the city itself, layered with years of struggle and small triumphs. I imagine the countless mornings that have unfolded in these same streets. The rituals of arriving, waiting, eating, and departing, a cadence repeated across decades. The architecture, the sidewalks, even the air carries memory, preserving the essence of lives lived on the edge. And so the morning continues, gentle and unhurried. Lines shift slowly, people move with care, and the missions remain beacons of temporary refuge, each one a small bulwark against the harsh realities of Skid Row. I allow myself to move through these spaces with quiet reverence, absorbing the textures of interaction, the weight of history, and the resilient pulse of human dignity. The walk is uninterrupted, flowing from one moment to the next, carrying forward into streets where struggle continues, where lives unfold in acts of quiet endurance and fleeting hope. The rhythm of the day grows steadily, yet there is no need to conclude. The story continues, as it always does, in the soft gestures of care, the measured movements of those seeking and giving sustenance, and in the enduring presence of the missions themselves. Life persists, quietly and insistently, along these streets, and each step through them is an invitation to witness, reflect, and honor the shared humanity present in every fleeting glance and gentle action. The morning light presses unevenly through the gaps between buildings, fractured and pale, casting long, wavering shadows across cracked sidewalks. The air here is heavier than the blocks I've just walked, saturated with smoke, chemical tangs, and the faint sweetness of stale coffee that lingers from the nearby missions. As I move eastward from the quiet relief of the soup kitchens, the streets begin to tell a harsher story, one of dependency, surrender, and bodies stretched thin by years of neglect and survival. A man leans against a lamppost, his shoulders slumped, as if gravity itself had claimed him. His skin is pale, streaked with grime, and his eyes half-lidded and unfocused, gazing somewhere beyond the street, beyond the city, beyond the moment. His fingers twitch constantly, jerking toward invisible objects, and his lips part to murmur words that dissolve into the morning air before I can hear them. A small pipe rests on the pavement at his side, blackened from repeated use, forgotten in the haze enveloping him. He is neither fully present nor absent, a ghost tethered loosely to the waking world, moving through the morning with a rhythm dictated entirely by chemical necessity. On the curb ahead, a woman hunches over, her veins dark and prominent along her thin arms as she carefully measures a dose. Her hands shake violently, betraying the long hours of chemical consumption, and the hollowness of her eyes tells a story of exhaustion and craving. Each exhale is a shallow rasp, the faint metallic tang of burnt residue clinging to her clothing. Her lips are cracked and pale, her skin clammy and mottled, and the faint tremor in her legs makes it seem as though even standing is a feat of endurance. Beside her, a man mutters incoherently, rolling a small foil packet between his fingers with the precision of habit overriding pain. The streets are scattered with discarded syringes, crushed foil, and tiny plastic vials, small, grim monuments to repeated dependence, each one a marker of fleeting escape and permanent decay. The smell here is almost suffocating. Chemical smoke mingled with the tang of urine, damp cardboard, and the faint underlying sweetness of rotting food. It clings to the clothing and hair of anyone walking past, saturating the skin in a haze of city neglect and human frailty. Every inhalation carries the reality of desperation, and even the soundscape, the low, intermittent moans, whispers, and coughing, seems to echo off the walls with an almost ritualistic insistence. And then I noticed the signs of another kind of survival. Women stationed along the corners, clad in worn coats and scarves despite the warming sun, eyes scanning every passing car. Their posture is a mix of fatigue and calculation. Bodies curved against the chill of exposure and the weight of constant vigilance. One lifts a hand, gesturing subtly at a lone sedan crawling along the cracked asphalt. The driver slows, assessing, calculating, and finally stops. He lowers the window and speaks briefly with her. She leans in, voice soft but urgent, and soon disappears into the shadow of a nearby alley. Her footsteps quick, purposeful, yet careful to avoid attracting unwanted attention. The exchange is quiet, mechanical, practiced, a transaction of survival, of necessity, against the indifferent backdrop of the city. Moving further down the street, I am struck by the toll the chemicals have exacted on bodies. Skin mottled and scratched, lips cracked, fingernails broken and filthy, eyes sunken from sleepless nights. Limbs bend unnaturally, backs hunch under years spent on concrete, spines curved from lack of rest or medical care. Movements are deliberate but unsteady, hands reaching for cigarettes, syringes, foil, small packets, rituals that sustain life even as they erode it. Faces are gaunt, with deep hollows beneath eyes and cheeks that collapse inward, a visible echo of missed meals and stolen sleep. A man rests on the steps of a boarded-up storefront, humming a melody with no tune, rocking slightly as his head dips and snaps up again, eyes darting to unseen threats. His clothes hang loosely from a frame shrunk by neglect, and the smell of chemicals clings to him, a pungent aura marking his territory among the street shadows. A dog curls at his feet, its coat matted but breathing steady, silent witness to the slow unraveling of its companion. Pigeons hop between discarded cardboard and broken glass, indifferent to the chemical haze and human despair surrounding them. From the corner of my eye, another woman steps into view, tall, thin, and pale, leaning against a rusted fire hydrant. Her eyes scan each passing car with careful calculation. A sedan slows. The driver glances in the rearview mirror, nods, and pulls to the curb. She approaches with practiced nonchalance, a fleeting touch exchanged, a whispered word, and they disappear briefly into the shadows. Around her, another cluster of women huddle under the scant shade of a building awning. Their conversations low, punctuated by nervous laughter, eyes darting to every movement. These streets are threaded with the quiet rhythm of survival, body, habit, and necessity intertwining in patterns both predictable and tragic. I pause near a chain-link fence, letting the scene sink into me. Men and women drift in slow loops, drawn toward fires, pipes, or fleeting exchanges. Fingers tremble with nervous energy, lips part in shallow gasps, and eyes glaze with the chemical haze. The heat of the sun does little to warm them. The chill of the streets has seeped into their bones, leaving a hollow weariness that time cannot touch. Life persists, but it is frayed at the edges, brittle as the paper and cardboard that shelter them. I see the devastating effects laid bare in intimate, painful detail. A man coughing violently as he drags a pipe to his lips, his shoulders shaking with the force of each breath, eyes watering and unfocused. A woman sits slumped against a dumpster, motionless at first glance, until her arm twitches involuntarily, reaching for a syringe she has dropped repeatedly over the morning. Each movement is precise yet fraught with tremor, an intricate choreography dictated by withdrawal and craving. Even those who appear upright, alert, or conversational are shadowed by exhaustion, their features drawn tight with hunger and chemical need. A man staggers toward a shallow puddle, splashing water on his face with trembling hands, eyes half closed, mouth opening to whisper to himself. Another woman walks past, clutching a folded blanket, her back curved, knees bent with strain, and feet dragging against the pavement. Each person is a study in the fragility of life in extremis, a living portrait of what happens when survival is distilled to habit, craving, and the raw imperative of the next dose. As I continue, along cracked sidewalks and over scattered debris, I notice interactions that speak volumes about the undercurrents of these streets. Men exchange small packets silently. Women share brief nods, a glance, a word of warning. A man coughs harshly near a small fire, passing a tin cup to someone huddled beside him, smoke curling upward to mingle with the chemical haze. These are gestures of quiet solidarity amid destruction, fleeting affirmations of connection in a world that otherwise offers little. From a shadowed corner, another woman approaches a waiting car. A hand reaches from the window, money exchanged, words murmured, and she disappears again into the alley, footsteps echoing against the concrete. It is a scene repeated countless times along this stretch, a rhythm of commerce and survival, the transaction subtle yet undeniable. There is no glamour here, only a raw, unflinching negotiation of body, need, and necessity. Everywhere, the consequences of years of abuse are clear. Skin hangs loosely on thin frames, lips split and raw, fingernails ragged or missing, eyes haunted, hollowed. Movement is jerky, twitching, sometimes collapsing into the nearest available support, a wall, a fence, a pile of cardboard. Voices are hoarse, slurred, or absent altogether, replaced by muttered syllables or low, repetitive humming. Even smiles, when they appear, are fleeting and fragile, slipping into grimaces as quickly as they come. I pause near a small pile of discarded needles and foil, taking a slow breath. The chemical fog clings to my lungs, a heavy reminder of the invisible weight carried by every person here. I watch a man tilt a small spoon, flame beneath it, eyes watering, hand shaking violently. A woman beside him leans forward, inhaling sharply, eyes rolling back, teeth clenching against the ache of withdrawal. Another figure shifts nearby, groaning softly, shivering despite the growing sun. The city seems to breathe with them, inhaling their suffering, exhaling its indifference. As I step past each figure, I carry the weight of their presence with me, the raw, tragic, persistent hum of this world settling quietly into memory. The faint sound of footsteps, the whisper of movement, the occasional shuffling shuffle of a shopping cart. Each detail layers upon the other, creating a tapestry of despair, endurance, and fleeting moments of humanity. Here, on 4th Street and Los Angeles Street, life is not just survival, it is chemical surrender. It is negotiation for warmth and sustenance. It is bodies and minds eroded and bent by circumstance and addiction. And yet, even amid the devastation, there is a rhythm, a fragile network of connection and persistence, threads that hold together the torn fabric of these streets. The morning continues, thick with smoke, muttered words, fleeting glances, and the quiet resilience of those who navigate a world that has often forgotten them. The sunlight is warmer now, but still pale, filtering in fragmented shafts between towering, dilapidated buildings. As I step off the main street onto San Julian, the rhythm of the neighborhood changes. The noise of traffic recedes, replaced by the uneven shuffle of human movement. Bare feet scraping concrete, the creak of carts overloaded with belongings, soft murmurs, and the occasional bark or whimper of a dog navigating the debris-strewn streets. The closer I get to the alleys, the more the air smells of smoke, decay, and chemicals, a pungent, layered tapestry that immediately signals the fragility and danger of this part of Skid Row. The buildings here are tired, angry almost, their facades cracked and peeling, windows broken and jagged, doors hanging off rusted hinges. Some structures lean slightly, their frames warped by years of neglect. Graffiti scrawled across walls like desperate messages to anyone who might notice. The shadows beneath their eaves are thick and foreboding, hiding the unseen, the unknown. I step carefully over broken glass, empty cans, and frayed tarps, aware that danger here is never far, and that the quiet shuffle of movement can erupt at any moment into violence. In one alley, a man lies slumped against the wall, skeletal and frail. His skin is pale, mottled with bruises and streaks of grime, clothing hanging loose from his frame. A pipe rests near his hand, the smoke curling lazily as his eyes flutter open, glazed and unfocused, only to close again as though retreating from the world. Each breath rattles softly, shallow and uneven, and I can see the tremor in his fingers, a body corroded by chemical dependence. The stench of burned substances and unwashed clothing mingles with the faint metallic tang of dried blood on the pavement nearby. A faint commotion draws my attention further down the alley. A young woman huddles against a wall, a man standing over her, demanding money with sharp, threatening words. She hesitates, trembling, and I see the desperation in her posture, the quick calculations running through her mind. Compliance, resistance, escape. Coins clink as she hands over a few crumpled bills, and the man shoves her roughly before turning away, melting back into the shadows. My chest tightens. The streets are not only harsh, they are unpredictable, violent, a landscape where survival often requires constant vigilance. I turn a corner, hoping for a quieter stretch, but tension simmers in the air like static electricity. A cluster of men, faces taut and aggressive, begin shouting at one another, voices low at first, then rising into a jagged crescendo. Within moments, A scuffle erupts. Fists pounding against chests, limbs flailing. Someone thrown against a rusted dumpster. The fight draws others in, shouts echoing off the walls of boarded-up storefronts, and I step back, keeping a careful distance, observing the brutal choreography of desperation. The clatter of metal, the occasional grunt of pain, and the sharp scent of sweat and blood mix with the pervasive aroma of smoke and decay. Even as chaos unfolds, life continues around it. Dogs weave through the legs of the combatants. A stray cat darts beneath a broken fence. People watching warily from doorways. The derelict buildings here frame each moment of danger. Faded signs hang crookedly, windows gape like open mouths, and rusted fire escapes loom overhead like skeletal reminders of past lives and current neglect. Cardboard and plastic sheeting create tenuous shelters, flimsy against the wind and indifferent to the violence that might erupt at any moment. One false step on the uneven pavement could lead to a fall, or worse, put a passerby in harm's way. Each step requires vigilance. Every shadow could conceal the unexpected. Every alleyway might hide desperation or intent. Amid this environment, the toll of drug use is starkly visible. A man leans against a building, face drawn tight, veins prominent in pale arms, eyes darting and unfocused. He raises a pipe to his lips, inhales sharply, exhales a thin plume of chemical smoke, then sways unsteadily before catching himself on the rough brick wall. Nearby, another figure rocks gently, muttering to himself, lips cracked, fingers twitching repetitively. Each movement is a testament to a body corroded by years of chemical dependence, a fragile presence teetering on exhaustion, and the unpredictable pull of addiction. As I pass under the shadow of a fire escape, a woman in a threadbare coat signals discreetly to a car slowing at the corner. Money changes hands. A whispered conversation passes, and she slips out of sight down a narrow path behind a building. The air is tense with necessity, negotiation, and a quiet urgency. Life here is transactional in ways most of the city never sees. A delicate balance of survival, exposure, and fear. Further along, I notice the subtle, heartbreaking persistence of life. A man pushes a shopping cart past figures slumped in the corners, nodding softly in recognition. A woman adjusts a blanket draped over her shoulders, preparing for the night ahead. Tiny gestures of care and recognition ripple through these streets, acts of human endurance stitched quietly into the harshness of the environment. Even in the shadows, small threads of dignity persist. The danger, however, is never far. Another alleyway opens before me, lined with piles of debris and the skeletal frames of abandoned buildings. A shout cuts through the morning air, sharp and urgent. Two men are engaged in a scuffle over a discarded bag. One throws a punch, the other shoves him against the wall, dust and broken plaster falling like brittle rain. The alley vibrates with tension, the metallic smell of blood sharp against the acrid smoke and decay. Passers-by hurry by, glancing quickly but avoiding interference. Everyone here has learned the rhythm of avoidance, of survival through observation. In quieter corners, the ravages of chemical dependence continue to unfold. A man crouches over a small, smoldering fire, shivering, the smoke curling into his hollowed face. His bones jut sharply beneath thin clothing. His hands tremble as they hover near the flame, seeking warmth that is never sufficient. Another leans against the wall, skin raw and mottled, inhaling from a pipe with lips cracked and pale. Every exhale a rasping whisper of fleeting relief. The streets themselves bear witness to the countless hardships. Cracked sidewalks, shattered glass, rusting metal, and tattered signs form a landscape of neglect and endurance. Each object tells a story. Discarded cups and syringes speak to cycles of use, broken boards and tarps to temporary shelters, and the graffiti scrawled across walls a mixture of defiance, memory, and warning. The architecture is alive with history. Every crack and crease echoing the lives unfolding below. Despite the violence and decay, moments of human tenderness persist. A dog curls beside a man slumped over a crate, nuzzling his hand. A woman adjusts a child's blanket with gentle precision. Someone quietly offers water to a man staggering nearby. These small acts of connection are fragile, fleeting, yet profound, a soft counterpoint to the harsh rhythms of chemical dependence, desperation, and street violence. The walk continues, weaving through alleys and abandoned spaces, each corner revealing danger, despair, and resilience. The sun climbs higher, illuminating broken windows, rusted railings, and the harsh lines etched into every face. Skid Row breathes here in sharp, uneven pulses, carrying both the chaos of survival and the stubborn persistence of human presence. Even in the most desolate spaces, life asserts itself. A stray cat leaps from a pile of rubble. A dog stretches in a patch of sun. A woman arranges her meager possessions on the ground. The streets are unforgiving, yet within them, survival and small gestures of care endure. Danger, despair, and human resilience exist side by side, each layer of the neighborhood revealing the fragile, complex heartbeat of Skid Row. And so, I continue walking through shadows, danger, and the fractured humanity of these streets, observing the unfiltered realities of survival. Each alleyway, each decrepit building, each fleeting moment of connection is a reminder of the precarious balance between peril and persistence. The neighborhood is a mosaic of endurance, a place where every heartbeat is claimed against the odds, and every step taken carries both caution and witness. The morning sun climbs higher, spilling pale gold over cracked sidewalks and the pockmarked facades of derelict buildings. Just yesterday, or so it seems, I had walked through alleys haunted by violence, where drug use left bodies hollowed and eyes vacant, where desperate acts of survival felt fragile against the indifferent city. Here on Crocker Street, the remnants of that darkness linger. Shattered windows, warped doors, graffiti etched with frustration, and corners where despair seems to gather like dust. Yet amid these shadows, small lights of resilience glimmer, persistent and unmistakable. A block away, a woman tends a small fire in an improvised metal barrel. The smoke curls gently, softening the jagged lines of the surrounding buildings. Her hands, roughened by life on the streets, move carefully as she boils water. It is an ordinary act, yet in this neighborhood, even the simplest gesture is heroic. I recall the men slumped against walls in prior streets, eyes glassy from drugs, bodies trembling with exhaustion or withdrawal. Here, warmth and care carve out a fragile resistance to the despair that so often dominates. A group of men and women gathers around a makeshift table constructed from plywood and crates. They paint signs that point to resources: water, clothing, food. Each brushstroke is deliberate, a small assertion against the chaos I have witnessed. The muggings in darkened alleys, the fights sparked by frustration and hunger, the endless circulation of poverty and neglect. The letters form words that offer guidance and structure in a space that too often lacks either. In these acts, I see a quiet rebellion, a refusal to let the darkness dictate the entirety of life here. Along the cracked pavement, children weave between tents and tarps. One clutches a tattered stuffed animal, dragging it like a talisman against the harshness surrounding him. Laughter escapes briefly, fragile and fleeting, yet it persists. Behind him, a mother watches from the doorway of a dilapidated hotel, her eyes sharp, scanning for danger, even as she allows her child a moment of joy. The tension between threat and safety, despair and hope, is palpable. Skid Row has always demanded vigilance, yet even in its darkest corners, life finds a way to bloom. A man sits against a wall, assembling metal pieces into what might be a lantern or small stove. Sparks flicker in the soft morning light, illuminating his intent. Nearby, a dog curls around his legs, sharing warmth and companionship. I think back to the drug users I passed in other streets, the hollow expressions, the trembling limbs, the fragile shells of people suspended between suffering and survival. Here, creation replaces consumption, careful attention replaces chaos, and hope is tangible in the sparks dancing across concrete and rusted metal. Even the alleyways, once dangerous and foreboding, pulse with subtle vitality. Women sort donated clothing into neat piles, laughter threading through their work, sharing knowledge and advice in quiet mentorship. Nearby, volunteers tend temporary wash stations, helping neighbors regain dignity, one clean towel, one rinsed hair, one gentle touch at a time. Each act of care is a defiance of the shadowed streets that seemed so merciless yesterday. A reclaiming of humanity, a quiet insistence that life need not be entirely consumed by despair. A small garden sprouts in the cracks of the sidewalk, a splash of green amid gray and decay. A young man kneels to tend the leaves, brushing dirt from the roots, coaxing life from soil that has known little care. I recall alleys lined with discarded syringes, where people's bodies had become frail and hollowed shells. Here, there is growth. Here, patience and attention cultivate more than plants. They cultivate hope. Even in a neighborhood so long defined by neglect, resilience takes root, stubbornly asserting itself against the odds. Nearby, a derelict storefront has been transformed into a makeshift learning center. Volunteers teach literacy, arithmetic, and survival skills to adults and children alike. The concentration on their faces is mirrored in the tentative smiles of those who soak up knowledge as if it were sustenance. In stark contrast, I remember the hollow stares of attics in alleyways, consumed by the chemical haze of escape, grasping for survival, yet unable to grasp life. Here, opportunity exists in deliberate, tangible ways, proof that even the darkest streets can harbor beacons of change. I pause to watch a man help another recover from a minor injury, guiding him gently while offering water. Nearby, women organize food donations, acknowledging each passerby with a nod or a smile. Each act, small and unassuming, creates a network of care that contrasts sharply with the violence, theft, and addiction I have witnessed in the last few streets. This is not naive optimism. It is courage, enacted quietly, persistently, and without fanfare. Even the derelict buildings, which once seemed to loom like silent judges of failure, now frame scenes of quiet heroism. Broken windows catch the sunlight, illuminating acts of resilience. A woman folding blankets, a child chasing a dog in laughter, a volunteer setting up a small table of hygiene supplies. The contrast is stark. The same walls that had witnessed despair now reflect human determination. Shadows exist, yes, but they are threaded with streaks of light, and those streaks are not fleeting. They are resilient. I walk slowly, taking in the rhythm of survival shaped by hope rather than fear. A volunteer hands a blanket to a shivering man, speaking softly as they move toward sunlight. Children play briefly between tents, under watchful eyes. A musician strums a guitar on the steps of a boarded-up hotel, the sound tentative but brave, cutting through memory of sirens, shouting, and drug-induced stupor from previous blocks. Even the smallest notes carry defiance against despair. A group of young men organizes water bottles, food, and hygiene kits for distribution. Their movements are deliberate, coordinated, almost ritualistic. Humor threads through their work, lightening the burden of scarcity. I think back to the muggings and fights I witnessed, the sudden eruptions of fear and survival in yesterday's streets. Here, there is structure, there is planning, and there is care. Even amidst poverty and dereliction, human creativity and compassion assert themselves with tangible force. A dog curls around an elderly man's legs as he waters the tiny garden he tends. Children skip past, carefully avoiding puddles and debris, their laughter threading into the morning. Volunteers offer food, clothing, blankets, and instruction, gestures that insist, you are seen, you are valued, you are not forgotten. The contrast between yesterday's shadows and today's light could not be more vivid. Where neglect and substance once dominated, compassion and ingenuity now persist. As the walk draws to a close, I pause at a corner, bathed in sun. Around me, threads of hope weave an intricate tapestry across the gray cityscape. Neighbors helping neighbors, volunteers mentoring youth, adults learning new skills, children discovering small joys, gardens blooming in concrete cracks, musicians daring to create amidst ruin. The derelict buildings, the broken streets, the lingering odors of hardship, they frame these acts, amplifying their significance. Shadows remain, but they only serve to highlight the stubborn, insistent pulse of life. Skid Row is not merely a story of darkness. It is a story of resistance, resilience, and quiet defiance. The people here assert their humanity every day. Through small gestures, creative acts, and steadfast community. Even amid decay and neglect, hope threads through the streets like sunlight through a broken window, delicate, determined, and undeniable. I take a final, slow breath, letting the textures of the street settle into memory. The warmth of sunlight on concrete, the laughter of children, the faint aroma of coffee mingled with the scent of fresh earth from small gardens, the glint of painted signs reflecting the morning. The neighborhood carries both shadows and light, despair and determination, danger and care. Each step I have taken threads through these dualities, bearing witness to the resilience of the human spirit. Rest easy, friends. The rabbit hole of time holds many more slow steps. Until we meet again, Silas is signing off.